Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Welcome to Dig on America, where we speak truth to power. Every week, we give you the dig on how American history, policies, and media created the social and political issues we face today. DOA is independent media supported by listeners, but they'll tell you we're just fake news, deep state propaganda, funded by George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, BLM Marxists, and
Helena.
Who?
Helena, Thor's sister.
Oh, Hella.
Hella.
She's hella hot. Yeah.
That bitch was crazy. That's what she was.
Henry Winkler.
Go ahead, Anna.
Steve Jobs turtleneck.
Ah! His turtleneck. That's funny.
Just the shirt, not Steve Jobs.
An old favorite. We know him. We love him. John Cena as the Peacemaker.
I still love that
God
intro.
damn, I wish I could talk about the boys right now, but I don't want to.
Hey, you got to get a stream going with TJ and do that. But hey, welcome back. Dig on America. This is Jasen Dutch. Mikey Famine here with me.
Hello.
The legitimate son of Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That's my real dad.
And also the legitimate son of Terry Crews, Big Haas.
Why you do my mans like that? Why you do my mans like that?
And Dutch is the legitimate son of Rainn Wilson's character in The Office.
I'll take that.
Dwight Schrute son.
And we have the
Dwight is my favorite character.
Dwight Schrute is the best part of The Office,
Dwight is-
and Rainn Wilson is the only thing that makes that show worth watching.
False.
Also with us, attorney
Black
Anna,
players.
who is just legitimate. Just it, on GP, she's just legit. Attorney Anna's back.
Right.
And
Janet
newest-
Jackson.
Wait, hold on. I gotta know what GP means, because my mom always she would just smack me.
Get smacked on GP. That's general
GP.
principle. That's general principle.
I never knew. I just
for some shit that you thought you got away with.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom used to give me a smack on GP.
You know, the first time I heard general principle, you know where I learned that term from?
Yeah,
Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction. Yeah.
You shady. That was shady. That was so shady.
Haas is like that. He's just not a very good person. I mean, we know that. We understand it. It's all it's a ruse. He's just kind of a bad guy.
Fall down.
Let's move into the dig, and then we'll do the humor, and then we'll get the hell up out of here. Mikey, Haas, Anna, Lauren, let's learn some history. All right, so my 8th grade social studies teacher,
Mr. Humble,
taught me things that turns out after doing my own research wasn't exactly the whole story. And this week, we will dive into the topic of freedom of the press as related in the First Amendment and Julian Assange specifically. This is an important story.
Juicy J.
This is a longer dig, but I cannot stress how important this is, especially being in media. If any of my co-hosts would like me to pause, they will yell out pause, and I will do so if they want to interject. So here's the first question. Should we be at risk of being jailed for sharing information publicly that exposes the crimes of another person or entity? This is the question at the center of the Julian Assange situation. There have been updates on the Assange situation this last week, which is sort of page 5 news with the J6 hearings going on, but it's an important story to still discuss in what he did and why the Obama administration didn't pursue him and why Trump did. Okay, so let's start with the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which reads as follows. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free speech exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, comma, or of the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. End quote. The Bill of Rights was proposed as a concession to anti-federalists who opposed the ratification of the new Constitution. Initially, the First Amendment applied only to laws enacted by the Congress, and many of its provisions were interpreted more narrowly than they are today. Anna, stop me if you want to interject in any of these cases. Okay. Beginning with Gitlow versus New York in 1925. Get low. How low can you go? The Supreme Court applied the First Amendment to states, a process known as incorporation, through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. The Free Press Clause protects publication of information and opinions and applies to a wide variety of media. In the case Neer versus Minnesota, 1931, and New York Times versus U.S. in 1971, SCOTUS ruled that the First Amendment protected against prior restraint, which is basically pre-publication censorship in almost all cases. It should be noted that 1A applies only to state actors, despite a common misconception that it prohibits anyone from limiting free speech, including private entities, which it does not. Moreover, the Supreme Court has determined the protection of speech is not absolute. So the Supreme Court declined to rule on the constitutionality of any federal law regarding the free speech clause until the 20th century. For example, the Supreme Court never ruled on the Alien and Sedition Acts, which Thomas Jefferson ultimately had to overturn. During the patriotic fervor of World War I, which we're seeing a relapse of today, and the first Red Scare, the Espionage Act of 1917 imposed a maximum sentence of 25 years for anyone who caused or attempted to cause, quote, insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or refusal of duty in the military or naval forces of the U.S. Socialist Party of America official Charles Schneck, Schenck, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, was convicted under the Espionage Act for publishing leaflets urging resistance to the draft in 1919. A unanimous Supreme Court concluded that the defendants who distributed flyers to draft-age men, such as Schenck, urging resistance to going into the military, could be convicted of an attempt to obstruct the draft. Obviously, a criminal offense, as laid out earlier. The First Amendment did not protect the defendants from prosecution, even though in many places and in ordinary times, and this is a quote from the court, the defendants, in saying all that was said in the circular, would have been within their constitutional rights. But the character of every act depends on the circumstances in which it is done, end quote. The free speech and free press clauses have been interpreted as providing the same protection to speakers as to writers, with the exception of radio and television broadcasters, which for historical reasons have been given less constitutional protections.
Why?
Anna?
Sorry, what was the question? Why what?
Why not? Why can't I say whatever I want on TV? Why can the government?
Why is the precedent different for radio and television workers? Well, I'll repeat the sentence so that you got the full context. The free speech and free press clauses have been interpreted by SCOTUS as providing the same protection to speakers as to writers, except for radio and TV broadcasters, which have been given less protection. And Mikey wants to know
if I'm not mistaken, it's just because those speakers have the potential to reach more wide-ranging audiences. Right. So that's the difference, as opposed to like if you just go out and yell something on your block, maybe only your block can hear it. But if you're, let's just say, I know this is not the same because, you know, internet, but Joe Rogan or Alex Jones, where you can reach millions of people with certain things, like it's like that ideology where it's not the same effect, and it's a vastly different number of listeners, so the impact will be different.
Platform is much bigger.
So you're saying I can cause way more damage to the society as a whole, thus making it dangerous for taxpaying citizens?
Basically.
Yeah. Why'd you leave that out, Dutch? Yeah, we did. He's going to bed, it looks like.
Okay. All right. So I'm trying to keep it short for you there, Mikey. All right. So the Free Press Clause protects the rights of individuals to protect themselves through publication and dissemination of information, ideas, and opinions without interference, constraint, or prosecution by our government. This right was described in Brandsburg versus Hayes as a fundamental personal right that is not confined to newspapers and periodicals, but also embraces pamphlets and leaflets. So stuff you would pass out. In Lovell versus the City of Griffin, Chief Justice Charles Evans, in this case was in 1938, Chief Justice Charles Evans Hughes defined the word press as, quote, every sort of publication which affords a vehicle of information and opinion. So all this stuff is going to lead into Assange, okay? So this right has been extended to media, including newspapers, books, plays, movies, and video games. Attorney Anna, any thought on that? Am I missing anything there?
No, I think it's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. So I'm trying not to keep it too granular to make it boring. But so this brings us to Assange. So Assange, for those who don't know who he is the founder of WikiLeaks, which is most famous perhaps for leaking the emails during the 2016 election. So they leaked nearly 20,000 emails from top DNC officials, which showed that instead of remaining neutral during the primary contest, these DNC officials, we've talked about this a million times, were agitated with Bernie Sanders and his campaign. So they were floating around via email ways to undermine his candidacy. And this ultimately led to the resignation of DNC head Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who, of course, was then elected to Congress the day before the convention. Later, WikiLeaks published emails hacked from Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta's account and dealt a harmful blow to Hillary Clinton's presidential run, which was, of course, attributed to Russian interference. We talked about this with the Mueller report. So before all this, however, WikiLeaks had published a series of video in 2010 showing alleged war crimes committed by the U.S. in the Middle East. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning, who was stationed in Iraq, was really disturbed by the dehumanization of Iraqi people and just in Iraqis in general, inherent to U.S. military occupations there. She had a trove of documents that showed how first world countries exploit third world nations through crazy, this part's a quote, crazy, almost criminal political back dealings. You don't say. Manning believed that if she could get this information to the American people, then the truth would spark a meaningful debate in the public sphere, which could influence future policy. The New York Times, the Washington Post, and Politico all turned Manning down flat. So she went to WikiLeaks, who had previously leaked information on Sarah Palin. They were newer then. They'd run some stories on the government of Iran with some nuclear issues and a lot of stuff with corruption and banking. And WikiLeaks was started in 2006 by Assange. So WikiLeaks, and this was very, very early in the infancy of WikiLeaks as a company when Manning did this. So WikiLeaks released a video of a 2007 airstrike under the Bush administration filmed from an Apache helicopter gun site. So the gun site is what the camera is seeing. And this video killed 12 people in Baghdad, including 2 Reuters news staff. I believe you pronounce it Reuters or Reuters.
Reuters.
Which WikiLeaks titled this story Collateral Murder. Soldiers in this video fired upon a van rescuing wounded and injured children in the process. One of the pilots responded, "Well, it's their fault for bringing their kids into a battle." End quote. Reuters had filed Freedom of Information Act requests about the incident, but never received the video. The Pentagon was reportedly taken by surprise when the video was then released on WikiLeaks. And this was under the Obama administration. So we're not here to defend Obama. Okay. This is not, we are honest in our reporting. So if the Pentagon was taken off guard by the release of Collateral Murder, one can only imagine how they took what happened next. In the largest leak in U.S. military history, WikiLeaks released internal military logs from Afghanistan. The Afghan logs did not stay the largest leak for long, however. They were quickly surpassed by another release of similar logs from the Iraq War. Next came releases of State Department cables and the U.S. Guantanamo Bay detainee assessments showing that the U.S. under Obama and under Bush had knowingly held 150 innocent men.
Pause.
Yes.
Do you remember when the second greatest rapper of all time had his
Bushwick Bill?
How dare you? No, Mos Def, where he did his thing where he went through the same.
Oh, your brother.
Yes, did the same like force feeding routine that they do for the people in Guantanamo Bay because they were fasting for Ramadan and they were force feeding them with tubes, even though that they were fasting. So that's half the reason why Mos Def disappeared. Is all that same time period. Am I correct? Did y'all see that? Y'all hear that? Nothing?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
See, this is why we do this show, because we're smart people. Well, Mikey is at least, and Anna.
I just Google stuff real fast.
So I got the Google on my watch. I wish I had that watch when I was taking tests in college. Anyway, the Iraq and Afghan war. So again, we knew that we were holding 150 innocent men in Guantanamo Bay. Again, Obama did this too. The Iraq and Afghan war logs exposed the reality of U.S. occupations and how our soldiers are trained to act, causing not only the death of innocents, but emotional turmoil in a lot of cases that this has caused for our veterans. Okay. You're under orders to do something, you do it, and then you have nightmares about it for the rest of your life.
And those are guys that are my age.
Mm-hmm.
They're my age now.
United States authorities began investigating WikiLeaks, again, under Obama and Biden.
WikiLeaks. I love WikiLeaks.
And Assange. So they investigated WikiLeaks and Assange personally to prosecute them under the Espionage Act of 1917. In November of 2010, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder, Obama's wingman, said there was, quote, an active ongoing criminal investigation into WikiLeaks with an FBI informant working within the organization WikiLeaks. Some Snowden documents published in 2014.
Pause.
Yes.
Isn't it amazing how the government goes COINTELPRO so easily to disassemble and infiltrate groups that they deem a threat to the public, but it's actually just a threat to them and their nefarious activities. No matter what letter is before the leader of the nation's name at the time.
Again, you don't say. I can someone stop us when this sounds familiar? Anyway.
Whoops.
So some of the Snowden documents, that's another dig coming up down the road, published in 2014 showed that the U.S. government had put Assange on its 2010 manhunting timeline. What is that? That is an annual account of efforts to capture or kill alleged terrorists and others. And in the same period, urged our allies to open criminal investigations into Julian Assange. In the same documents, there was a proposal by the NSA to designate WikiLeaks a, quote, malicious foreign actor, thus increasing the ability to surveil it. Assange, who was charged with 2 counts of sexual misconduct in Sweden, and Sweden, by the way, known to have some very, very harsh penalties for sexual misconduct. They cut you know what, no, they don't really do that, but was granted asylum by Ecuador and hid in their embassy for 7 years. Now, those charges, I should note, those sexual misconduct charges were eventually dropped due to, under one narrative, lack of evidence, and the other just too long ago. Not sure which of those is true because I've read both, but possibly both are true. So in 2019, the U.S. unsealed an indictment against Assange. That same morning, the Ecuadorian president, coincidentally, or not, revoked Assange's asylum privileges.
Hold on one second. We got to have a correction. The embassy in London.
Yes, and the London police entered the assembly and arrested him. But it was the Ecuadorian assembly in London.
In London.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
Isn't that what I said? So,
Yes.
so London police entered the embassy that later that day and arrested him. Last Friday, so now we're current day, right? You're in the movie, you're watching the flashback, present day. Last Friday, the UK ordered the extradition of Assange to the US, and Assange had 14 days from then, which is about probably 5 or 6 days still from now, to appeal this extradition. So according to Assange's brother, who I believe is named Gabriel Shipton, this is a quote, "This proves that the UK government agrees that a journalist, a publisher, can be extradited to the US for simply doing their job. So this is a hugely dangerous precedent that's been set. It's a once-in-a-lifetime threat." He goes on to point out that it's not the criminals who are being punished here, but the publisher, which I think is a super, super salient point. And then, by the way, the New York Times, the Guardian, and other publications also published the same stuff without any action being taken against them. So if found of all 17 Espionage Act charges, which were originally brought by the Trump administration, Assange could face a 175-year prison sentence. By the way, the U.S. has said they'll let him serve it in Australia, who has notoriously bad prisons. So there are also reports, now this is reports, right, that allegedly. The CIA, who'll sprinkle allegedly on this, there are alleged reports that the CIA plotted to kidnap and discuss also plans to assassinate Assange while they were under the leadership of Mike Pompeo, who's probably going to run for president in 2017. Pompeo, complete ass clown. This is a quote from Trevor Timm, who's I believe a legal analyst and a historian. So the Obama administration considered indicting Assange before concluding it could not do so without encroaching on core press freedoms. So Obama did not go after him because he didn't want to infringe on the First Amendment, because the Constitution happened to have some weight to the Obama administration.
You're acting like Obama has some connection to the Constitution, like it was like part of his profession or something.
It's this crazy thing for a communist Muslim, to care about the Constitution. But anyway, the Trump administration,
like a constitutional professor or something. Like I don't know.
Don't know. It's odd. It's super odd. But the Trump administration, used the exact same information Obama had to manufacture, and again, this is in Tim's words, a flimsy indictment involving a conspiracy to violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, based entirely on alleged conversations between Assange and the aforementioned Chelsea Manning. While the Trump administration has not declared the act of publishing illegal, at the core of its argument, and again, this is according to this gentleman, the core of its argument, the Trump administration's argument, would criminalize common journalist source interactions that reporters rely on. Examples being requesting documents using an encrypted chat messenger, which is very common, and keeping a source's identity anonymous. Again, super common. These are not crimes. They are vital to the journalistic process. Tim ends his quote with, and I paraphrase a little bit of this. Whether or not you like Assange, he says, the charge against him is a serious press freedom threat and should be protested by those who care about the First Amendment. AP has reported that Trump viewed Assange as a political enemy, and that Trump offered Assange a pardon if he would say that Russia was not linked to the DNC leaks.
Of course he did.
So think about that. He said, well, I know you did all this shit. You released all this shit that you were saying endangered national security in 2007, that happened in 2007 that you released in 2010. But, I'm tired of this Mueller investigation. You say that Russia had nothing to do with it. I'll pardon you. Assange, of course, did not do that.
Typical.
The Biden administration, and this is the part that is the most damning. The Biden administration, guys, has continued the Trump administration policy pursuing charges against Assange despite pushback from human rights and press freedom groups, including the ACLU, Amnesty International, Reporters Without Borders, and many others. So this is Biden continuing the Trump philosophy. And in closing, Assange's supporters see him as a champion of free speech, exposing the abuses of power and hypocrisy by Washington. Sounds familiar? Because you're watching a show that does that. And they regard, again, his supporters regard his prosecution as a threat to journalism. U.S. authorities, just to give their narrative on this, say he recklessly endangered the lives of sources with the videos that he released. So, and then, of course, the national security argument we talked about before. So that is basically the dig. I'm going to open this up for commentary. I think we should start with our resident attorney. Just your thoughts, Big Haas, since you've passed the bar, the Charleston Chew bar.
The bench press bar.
Ladies first.
Yeah. So, guys, just round table, your thoughts on this case. Whether or not you like Assange, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have read a little bit about it before we came on today. So, I think, well, I just like to try to see what is going on with the actual cases and how it's been matriculated and whatnot. And I find it kind of interesting because at the end of the day, the free speech is there, like journalistic integrity and for them to be able to actually do full and fair reporting, for them to be able to protect their sources, all that stuff is necessary. I mean, that is what the First Amendment is for. That is what whistleblower protections and things like that are for. I think that no matter what, though, just because America is how it is, they're going to go after someone who does it. And it's unfortunate. And I think that they are willing to set a precedent, especially like you mentioned, Dutch, with some of this. I know it started before Trump, but with some of it kind of being pointed or more pointed by Trump. Trump is notorious for trying to expose whistleblowers. Like, he's notorious for trying to expose people's sources and things like that and retaliate against them when they don't do what he asked them to do. So to me, it's kind of the same ilk. I think, again, just regardless of what I think personally about Assange, I don't necessarily think that it's fair because he's not necessarily the person committing the crime. Like, he's the person, just as if let's just say CNN or MSNBC or even Fox got some illegally obtained footage, is it their fault for airing the footage? Like, it's not. And you wouldn't say that it is. You wouldn't say that it's the newspaper's fault for reporting something that was made known to them.
So I have a slight pushback and question at the same time. So let's say that there is cop is at a Dunkin' Donuts, and it's him and a couple of other cops.
My headphones just died. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's say that there's a cop sitting there, and he's having a meeting with other cops, and it's all their SWAT information. Like, we're pretty sure that we're gonna raid such and such and so, and they leave the binder or whatever it is, the documents on the table. Nobody, no customers come and pick it up, but the worker comes and picks it up, and then he posts all of those pictures to Facebook. Should that be protected under free speech?
So to answer your question, I don't know. Well, it's difficult because I guess for me, I'm considering Assange to be somewhat of a journalist in a way. Like, that's how I'm kind of understanding his actions to be and how WikiLeaks was holding itself out to be. Now, if you're just some random guy, not saying that you shouldn't have similar protections, but I guess it's different to me when you're trying to maneuver under the guise of having some type of press credentials versus someone who doesn't purport to have those same credentials. So I guess for me, it's like the act itself, and that's why people have a problem with Julian Assange. It's like, you put all these people in these sensitive documents at risk by what you did, but is that the same as the person who stole the documents putting that at risk versus you, exposing them. So to answer your question, I don't know if it's the same, just because for me, I guess the distinction is whether that person should have press protections or not. Like, I think that to me is what's operative, but I can't even say because I don't know.
Because for me, like, I watch a lot of like these First Amendment auditors and stuff like that. Like, I watch a lot of this stuff, and so I look and I listen, and I'm trying to get like a bigger picture of this. But if important documents and critical to national security somehow make it out into the open, and I'm outside with a camera, or it goes up on a billboard or something, and it happens, you can't get mad at the person. It's up to you to keep secret shit secret.
Yeah.
And if you, for whatever reason, don't keep it secret, then you can't then be mad at the people who find the information. If you don't want all your business out there on Facebook and people all talking about your relationships, stop fucking answering them quizzes and putting all your goddamn data and information out there.
Yeah.
You can't complain about Amazon listening to everything when all you do is talk to them all day.
Yeah.
With quizzes.
Yeah. So for me, on the Julian Assange, I guess I think that if the government's going to be mad at somebody, you can be mad at Chelsea Manning for leaking the documents because that was the leaker who was supposed to keep the secret stuff secret. But like, if it gets to someone who is a journalist and is going to publish these things and keep their sources private,
right?
To me, if you're gonna say that the press has those protections, you can't have it both ways because you don't like what was being posted because that was supposed to be secret. Now, a different argument is national security, imminent threats to certain people, imminent threats to certain things. Like, that's a different argument to me than what the actual press protections are. But I don't see how you can I don't see how you could punish Assange, let's just say, and you wouldn't punish the Guardian if the Guardian at the time had decided to publish the things that Assange had decided to publish, because they wouldn't go after those big box news organizations. They just wouldn't do it. They would go after somebody like WikiLeaks because it's not, an established brand and like the whole nine. So,
well, and it's fair to point out, I don't know how relevant this is, Attorney Anna, but Manning was court-martialed.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, yeah, she was punished. I mean, she was definitely punished. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you're gonna say someone needs the punishment, you can't get mad at the person who got the information. Like,
the person delivering the newspaper as opposed to the person printing the newspaper.
When people send stuff to the newspapers, you don't go after the newspapers. You go after the person who supposedly stole the stuff. Like,
but since the Patriot Act, can't the government say, okay, it's national security, I put that stamp on there, now you have to tell me who it is?
See, and that's I'm not super well versed in the depth and breadth of the Patriot Act and how far exactly they can go. So I'm just kind of hesitant to speak exactly on that. But if I know the United States government, they can argue whatever they want and they can kind of do whatever they want. And as long as you have the national security stamp on it, more likely than not, the interest of national security is going to outweigh whatever freedom that was guaranteed to you by the Constitution until proven otherwise. Like, that to me is kind of the stance of the government.
Yeah, but the thing with this is I don't see, and again, I think Assange has got some dark spots, right? As a guy. Mm-hmm. And obviously I think that what they did with the Clinton emails was politically motivated.
Of course.
But that being said, I don't see the connection between national security and a war crime that we possibly committed. Because there's nothing national security wise, like there's no imminent nuclear attack or any battle strategy or, outing a spy, or something like that. This was basically, now again, there was troves of documents and I haven't gone through all of those documents. Because I'd be dead if I read them all, right? Like, so it would take that much time. But the videos are really the things that they're upset about, and it's because to me, my plausible reason is it makes them look bad. It makes them look bad.
It's damning.
You don't get to keep this narrative of the U.S. always being right and being the savior of the world.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing as if like a dirty cop's body cam came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because everyone's a lot more transparent about it now, but before, man, it would take you a year and a half to get a body cam off of somebody.
Yeah, and by the way,
it would take forever.
If you ever even got it.
Total sidebar.
It would be all edited up and chopped out, and certain parts would be muted, and they would do whatever they need to do to make sure that their people could ride. So
yeah, and total sidebar on that, like these Uvalde cops are trying to say they don't want to release their body cam footage. Well, I got news for you. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go commit some crime, rob a bank or whatever. And when you catch me, I want you to turn off the cameras in the bank. I don't want you to release the footage of me doing the crime. It's totally ridiculous. But
I also found out
Odalve rabbit hole. But
also, I found out that the door to that classroom wasn't even locked.
No,
I have a feeling that
they were inside. They were inside with ballistic shields and shit. They were scared because they're just concerned about getting home at the end of their shift like everyone else.
What about the good guys with the guns? I'm like, wasn't that y'all? What about the good guys?
I apologize. I don't want to get us off on that rabbit hole, but there's going to be a lot more breaking on Uvalde, and I have a feeling by next week we're going to have a lot more to talk about with this. I think the cops might have inadvertently killed someone, but I don't know that. That's just my guess. But Haas, your thoughts on Assange and everything?
I think that in the grand scheme of things, Julian Assange is probably kind of a dick, maybe a little pervertish, but acting as a journalist, you act as a journalist if that's who you say you are. And in this day and age where anyone can break news because of technology.
I was about to say, who's a journalist then?
Right. That's what I'm saying, though. But that's what I'm saying. You don't necessarily have to be credentialed and have a journalism degree now to practice in journalism. It's almost like, you can go get a certificate from Google and do some IT work. You don't have to
do that. You just need a Twitter. And that's why I like Mikey's example of what you meant was leaving the documents out and somebody taking a picture. Cause it's like, if you're just, bent on exposing people, like,
so
are you a journalist?
For me, when hearing that Obama decided not to go after him because the Constitution actually means something, that spoke volumes to me as compared to people trying to twist and subvert and pervert laws and things to their own means just because they didn't like what was released. Because you guarantee goddamn if all that Julian Assange released was things that helped 45, he wouldn't be trying to get after him.
Right.
So as a journalist or a quasi journalist or whatever, I believe that, he deserves to be protected. As a person, I think he might be a piece of shit.
And that's the part that's odd about this is that you have Trump go after him when literally Assange plays a big part in Trump being in office in the first place with the timely release of those emails. And oddly enough, the FBI director at the time, James Comey, reopening the investigation into Hillary's emails right before the election. And who did Trump hate the most in the beginning of his campaign was Assange and Comey. It's so fucking weird, right? Like, but then you look at it and you're like, okay, the only plausible read is especially after you go through the Mueller report, which we did, and there's a lot of damning stuff in there, which we know, and it's not a nothing burger. And oddly enough, it's totally gone away.
Of course.
But you have like, he didn't want, he knew that his people within his circle were talking to Russia. Now, collusion, as Anna will tell you, super hard to prove, right? Like burden of proof for collusion, super hard. But the conversation and the optics of it, I think, were just so glaring that he wanted to say, oh, you know what? Let's just say that all this Russia stuff was just a hoax and it was all fabricated, and Assange can back me up on that. So like, but it's so weird that Trump went after him. And the only thing I can tie it back to is the fact that you had the Comey situation and the Russia situation with Flynn and everything at the time. So I could be off base there. But again, the main salient point is that Obama decided not to go after him. Trump did, because he viewed him as a political enemy. So we'll give Anna the last thought here on this. Just kind of, and then we'll move on to the. I guess me and Anna will cut out, and then we'll do House's Humidor. So, Anna, close us off on this if you would.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it said my mic had cut out. I mean, look, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. It's unfortunate, but the government can pick and choose who they want to go after, when they want to go after them, why they want to go after them, for whatever reason that they want to go after them. Like, as you just mentioned, Dutch, like in one administration, you can be like, you know what, First Amendment, we're not going to go after that. We don't want to set a negative precedent as for other journalists. We just don't even want to go down that road, just in case another situation, again, like Mikey gave a perfect example. Let's just say those kind of documents made their way to the Guardian or whomever. Do we really want to start doing this and allowing other federal prosecutors to do this? Maybe not. But next administration, we can turn around and do it. So, it just kind of
it's just like Hong Kong. It's exactly what they're doing in Hong Kong.
It just kind of speaks to the government. It just kind of the precedent, the laws are determined by who's sitting in the offices at the time that it happens, and hopefully the people who support you are in office at the time, if it happens to be you, because I don't know if he gets extradited back here. One of the things that you have mentioned, Dutch, he got a chance to, Assange got a chance to, prior to them deciding that he could be extradited, they allowed him to stay in the UK for a while because they felt that the American justice system was so harsh that he was at substantial risk of suicide if he came to prison in the United States, and for the length of time that he would potentially be facing. So, you know what I mean? Like, other countries are looking at this, but if at the same time, if I'm another country and I'm thinking about extradition, is Assange and free press more important to me than my relationship with America in the long term? Probably not, because I really don't even care about this dude. Like, yeah, I care about press protections, but am I getting money and trade and all these other things from America? Maybe that's what's more important to me. So, I mean, at the end of the day, all these things are politically motivated, money motivated, economically motivated. And it's unfortunate because if you have laws and rules, you should want to try to stick to them and try to apply them fairly, but we don't. So